Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, warshippers of all ages, welcome to YouTube. My name is SeaRaptor, and today we're continuing our first look series on the new Pan-Asian cruisers as we take a look here at Tier 6's Rahmat. Now, if you're used to the Pan-Asian ships in World of Warships, you know that generally the Pan-Asian ships are all, more or less, hand-me-downs. They're all ships that were built by another navy, then sold or gifted or whatnot to a Southeast Asian or a Pacific nation somewhere along the way, and then reflagged, maybe updated, maybe modernized a little bit, and now they appear in World of Warships. Rahmat is yes and no example of this, okay? Rahmat is a Dido-class light cruiser from the Royal Navy. Now, if you know the game well enough and you're familiar enough with British light cruisers, you're going, excuse me, flag on the play, Raptor. Dido is not actually in the game. And the answer is, well, no, she's not. Not yet. She's been announced, but she's coming. So what Wargaming, I guess, did along the way is they realized they needed something to fill this tier 6 slot in the line. They modeled Dido. And then, so here she is, this is her, and then the real HMS Dido will be a Tier 6 British premium that has been announced, will be forthcoming at some point. I'll have a first look video on her sometime in the future, when she comes to the live servers for testing. But for now, Rahmat is here in testing. Now, there's something else ahistorical going on here. One is that no Dido, actually that's not true. There was only one Dido-class cruiser transferred to another nation following World War II, all right? So what you're seeing here is not correct, okay? HMS Diadem was transferred, sold, whatever, to Pakistan in the mid-1950s and served that navy for a number of years. But she was the only Dido-class cruiser that was either not lost in combat or broken up after the war. So Rahmat here is a bit of a misnomer. So don't, this was not a ship that actually, she flies the flag of the Republic of Taiwan. She did not, this did not actually occur. No Dido-class cruisers were actually transferred to Taiwan. So yeah, a little ahistorical, maybe a little skim, I know there's a lot of historical buffs in the game that are going, fingernails on a chalkboard, but it is what it is. Anyways, let's look around and see how this ship stacks up to the competition at Tier 6. Because there's already an existing Tier 6 Pan-Asian premium cruiser, that's Huang He, which is the modernized version of the Tier 5 Chongqing. But let's have a look at Dido here and see if we can kind of figure out what's going on. First things first, as we always do, survivability 23,600 hit points. This is worst in tier. This is a song you're going to hear me sing a lot as we roll up the Pan-Asian line. There is not a lot of health to play with on these ships, and Rahmat here is no different. She wrests this crown away from her cousin, that would be Huang He, who has only 500 more hit points than this. So she's in good company, but yeah, not a lot of hit points, and you see there 4% torpedo protection. Spoiler alert: no Pan-Asian cruiser has more than 4% torpedo protection in the tech tree. So we're not really going to spend a lot of time talking about this. Don't take torpedoes; they're bad for you. Okay. Armor, as you would expect from a light cruiser, nothing to get excited about. You're looking at 13 mil extremities, so most destroyers can have their way with you if you find yourself in a gunfight and you are low on HP. And then Citadel belt here, only 89 millimeters. Now, like Chongqing down at Tier 5, the Citadel is largely focused in the after portion of the ship. And you can see here, it doesn't ride that far above the waterline. It does peak up above the waterline, but it's only a couple of feet. And like Chongqing, she's got the deal where, again, she doesn't have magazine citadels, okay? And, if you fire too far forward, if you lead the ship too far forward, and you hit her below the waterline up here below the bridge, there's no citadel space there. So, you've got to basically be aiming underneath the funnels when you shoot at one of these things, and you're looking for big citadels. So kind of keep that in mind as these guys start to appear when you can see them. Maneuverability and Concealment, 32.3 knots, 580 on the turning circle, 6.5 on the rudder shift time. Speed is on the low side for Tier 6. Most Tier 6 cruisers are I won't say most. I'll just say the speed is average. There's a lot of 32.5 knots ships in Tier 6. There are some that are faster. I'm looking at Duca d'Aosta or Molotov, but there are a handful that are slower. Graf Spee, Mysore, La Galicière, hilariously, is even slower than this. So speed is fairly middle of the road. It's generally, as I've looked up the Pan-Asian line, speed is generally not what these ships do well. So again, kind of keep that in the back of your mind as we look up and down the line. 580 on the turning circle is not too shabby. Not quite best in tier, but certainly on the better end. If you wanted me to pick a ship to maybe compare her handling to, I'm looking here. Man, it's tough because the rudder shift time is basically kind of a best in tier thing. So there really aren't any other tier 6 cruisers with a rudder this responsive. Duca d'Aosta comes close, but her turning circle is larger. So yeah, hard to quantify the handling right now. I'll just say, based on what I know about Duca, I'd say this ship's going to handle pretty well, and that's good. She's going to need it to dodge all the incoming shells that are going to be going mine. That ship only has 20,000 hit points, two Citadel hits, and that thing is toast. 10.3 on the surface detection, full stealth rig. Rahmat gets down to 9 flat, 9 even on the surface, and that's not too shabby for tier 6. Let's have a quick check. Is that best in tier? No, it's not. Again, Huanghe still exists. Perth is better than this, but there are some other ships in this range, namely Leander, also 9 kilometers on the surface. Most everybody else coming in after that. So she's not best in tier on detection, but she is very competitive. She's in the top 3, right? So that's noteworthy, and that's good. With this low health pool and everything, she's going to need that. So for the low health, the moderate speed, and the stealth, what are we getting for a main battery? Well, this is a very odd bag here. Rahmat's main battery is made up of 5 double-barreled 113 millimeter barrel turrets. Now, the only other ships in the game that I can remember, that I can think of off the top of my head, that use this caliber of gun is the top end of the British destroyer line. That's HMS Jutland and HMS Daring. Both use 113 millimeter guns, but they use a different version, a more modernized version of this turret. Even Jutlands are like the Mark IVs. You see there, these are 113 millimeter 45 caliber Mark IIIs. Jutlands are Mark IVs, and when you go look at them, the turrets physically look different. So I think what Wargaming has done here, these turrets I expect to be very historical because the Didos were built and actually existed, whereas I'm not positive, I'm pretty sure Jutland didn't, so I think the design for that turret may have existed, but what Wargaming did is they kind of extrapolated a theoretical modernization, upgraded version of this turret. You're going to see shades of Atlanta, I think, here in Dido, but there's some things to remember about the main battery as we look at this, so we'll talk about them. One is that reload time, okay? I've got a lot of barrels. These are basically destroyer guns, right? Not even 5 inches. These are like 4.5-inch guns, 4.4, something like this, okay? On a 5.3 second reload. So the turrets there, you see their 9-second turret traverse, 5.3 second reload. This thing's going to vomit out shells, like in Atlanta. So if you've fought in Atlanta, and they've been around forever, you've probably seen one. It's going to feel like that when you play it or when you fight against it. Maximum range there, 12.5 kilometers on the surface for the main battery is, I'm looking, pretty confident that's worst in tier. Yeah, that's worst in tier. Leander, 13.2, Perth, 12.8. 12.8 used to be the previous worst. That was tier 6 Commonwealth Premium HMAS Perth, but now Rahmat here is going to wrest that crown away. She is a little shorter range than that. Now, with these kinds of shells, that's not all that surprising. And you see there on the shell velocity, 750 meters a second. At those kinds of ranges, this is going to feel like in Atlanta. Those shells are going to be hanging on parachutes, right, as they come down on top of things. But what this ship obviously is going to do better than almost any other tier 6 light cruiser, this thing is going to slaughter destroyers. You find yourself drowning a destroyer within about 8 kilometers of this guy, you are probably going to wish you were somewhere else. So, yeah, when you see if you're playing a destroyer, you see one of these on the opposing matchmaking, stay frosty because, trust me, he's out there looking for you. Now, with only 113 millimeter shells, you see there on the right the armor penetration, 19 millimeters of armor. So what that means is that this ship, when firing HE, is going to be highly effective against opposing destroyers. In her tier matchmaking, most destroyers are in the 13 to 16 millimeter extremity range, so you're going to full pin those guys. Maybe the occasional light cruiser. But basically everything else, you're going to shatter those HE shells on. So you have some tough choices to make, okay, when you go to spec a captain playing a Rahmat and later on a Dido. You have to figure out, do I want IFHE? which would give me another, what, 4 to 5 millimeters of penetration, maybe 5, maybe 5. Or do I just swap over to AP, right? Because, you know, these little 113 millimeter AP shells are not bad. If you've played a Daring or a Jutland, you know that you use AP on those ships pretty on the regular. So, something to consider. This is not going to strictly be the same HE spammy light cruiser that Atlanta is, simply because her shells lack the penetration that they're going to need against some of the targets that she's going to commonly run into. Torpedoes. Let's have a quick look at this, because of course she does have torpedoes. She's got a triple launcher here on each side of the ship. These are deep water torpedoes, out to 9.5 kilometers, 61 knots. You see there 0.8 on the surface detection. That gives you a little less than 5 seconds of reaction time when they're coming in. So these are really effective torpedoes. And you see there again, 9.5 kilometers in the range. Remember her full stealth rig, 9 kilometers. So similar to Chungking down at tier 5, she does have the ability to, she can be the destroyer now. She has more torpedo range than she does surface detection. Reload there, only 72 seconds. I think that's pretty noteworthy, right? Being able to chuck 3 of these downrange every minute, that could be really handy. Like this, you could do a lot of good work with this ship. If a battleship's pushing into you and you're able to kind of just stay ahead of his detection, if he's got nobody else to spot for him, you can be a real jerk with these things. It could be fun. Depth charges, we'll just have a quick peek. Yes, she does have depth charges. Would expect to find them back here on the stern. Yep, there they are. There's my little roller launcher. 2 charges, 5 bombs each, 1,700 damage. That's kind of standard for the Pan Asian. The Pan Asian depth charges tend to be a little lighter side on the explosive capability. One thing that I've seen people say this, and I'm going to echo it here. I'm hoping Wargaming kind of addresses with submarines. If I manage to put this ship or any other destroyer in a position where I can actually put depth charges on a submarine, that guy should die, right? Submarines that survive more than one depth charge attack in World of Warships right now are infuriating. That shouldn't happen. Like, it's so difficult to get your ship into that position. You give up probably, you're sacrificing board position because you have to go to the sub, right? If you go to where he is and then risk your ship because he's spotting you the whole time. Everybody's shooting at you while you're rolling charges. Like, ugh. Anyway, I'll probably hold her video there maybe, but yeah, she does have depth charges. And then A defense. Now, these 113 millimeter guns are dual purpose. You see there, so that makes up her outer battery. You're looking at only 2 flak puffs. Feels kind of crappy for tier 6, if I'm honest. Let's have a peek. That shouldn't be worse than tier. No, it's not worse than tier. There's a lot of tier 6 ships that have this particular problem. There's not a lot of flak for most tier 6 cruisers. Like 4 puffs is the most. 1 is very common. You're looking at 2 here. 1190 on the flak puffs, and then outer bubble 63 DPS, middle ring 158, inner ring 42. So overall, Rahmat's AA power is roughly comparable. I'm looking up and down the list here to find a comparison. Do I have a good one? No, London is actually better because London puts up more flak. Trento is a good example. The difference is that she has more range than Trento, and most of Trento's firepower is in her inner ring, whereas most of Rahmat's firepower is in her middle ring. What are the Americans like? Dallas, let me see Dallas. 5'8", 2 puffs, punch in the middle, 63, 133. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'd say she's comparable to Dallas. Yeah, that looks about right. So yeah, if you're used to playing a Dallas, you're probably getting about the same amount of AA firepower, which means that against a tier 6 carrier, you're probably going to be pretty effective. Against a tier 8 carrier, you're probably going to cry a little on the inside. Tier 8 planes are going to have a little too much health for you unless they're like Kaga planes. But yeah, so she does have a decent little amount of defense here, a little bit of AA, and we'll expound upon that in a minute because she does get access to defensive fire. So consumables, obviously damage control party. She's a ship in World of Warships. We get damage control. Smoke generator. This is the same smoke you saw down at tier 5 with Chungking. This is the Pan Asian, the same smoke the Pan Asian destroyers have. 70-second dispersion time, 100-second reload time, only 3 charges. Unless you get blapped off the board, you should be able to use like these charges of smoke. That cooldown time is short enough. You should be able to use quite a bit of this smoke on your way. So the more I look at these ships, the more I think you have to be very deliberate about when you're going to use your smoke so that you don't run out too quickly in a game. And then she does, of course, get defensive fire. That's going to give her that little bit of oomph, a little bit of extra oomph. If you play Dallas and you push that button, you know that Dallas shreds planes pretty good. So, yeah, I'd say Rahmat and Dallas are about even in terms of AA firepower. I like the look of this ship. I feel like I feel like this is the kind of ship that you want to park near a cap circle and just kind of lurk around behind an island, waiting to ambush a destroyer, harass the enemy carrier, maybe throw some AP or HE over an island, downrange on a cruiser or battleship. Like, there's a lot you can do here. But there's going to be a lot of people that make mistakes with these ships because they're very fragile. So watching people kind of wrap their brain around the Pan-Asian cruiser line is going to be interesting. And Rahmat here I expect to be pretty popular because she is, I believe it's looking like she's going to be the first Dido-class ship to make it into the game ahead of the class lead herself, coming as a British premium. So yeah, I'm excited for this ship. But that 113mm main battery, definitely a learning curve there for anybody playing in the middle tiers. Anyway, guys, that's our first look at Rahmat over here in the Pan-Asian cruiser line. Hope you enjoyed that. Wash your hands, be safe, and I'll catch you next time.